Hi. My name is Aria Kensington. I am 22 years old. It was my sister-in-law's anniversary dinner, the kind of event where everyone pretends they love each other a little too much under crystal chandeliers. I smiled as we walked in, my clutch carefully tucked under my arm. Inside, I had made one small change, a single card swapped. A tiny shift, but it was enough. The dinner progressed with laughter, speeches, and toasts. My husband sat beside me, oblivious, reaching for my hand at every opportunity. I let him. Patience was key. Then it happened. My brother, flushed with pride, clinked his glass. "Sister, show everyone how much you love your brother," he announced, voice echoing across the hall. All eyes turned to me. I laughed softly, reaching into my clutch. My husband, confident and proud, leaned in to help. He thought he knew what was coming. The map, the gift, the gesture he had planned for them. But when he pulled out the card, it wasn't the expected map. Instead, a surprise for me slipped into view. A carefully orchestrated document that revealed his own secret misdeeds, a financial miscalculation he never expected to surface publicly. The room went silent. My husband froze. My brother's smile faltered. The laughter, the applause, the carefully rehearsed celebrations, all evaporated into shock. I smiled quietly. Calm. Controlled. Because in that moment, everyone realized, appearances can lie. And sometimes, the most satisfying surprises are the ones no one sees coming. The moment the card slipped from my clutch, the entire hall shifted. Eyes that had been smiling, clapping, nodding politely, froze. My brother's expression turned from pride to confusion. My husband stared at the card in disbelief, realizing instantly that this wasn't what he had expected. I stayed calm. Every move measured, deliberate. The air smelled of polished wood and candle wax, the low hum of a string quartet suddenly feeling tense, almost sinister. Whispers began. "Wait, what is this? Is that real?" I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The card, the map that should have been innocuous, now revealed a financial miscalculation my brother had hidden for months. A mistake big enough to embarrass him in front of every family member, every close friend, and even the business associates who had been invited. He tried to laugh it off. "It's nothing, just a..." But it was too late. My husband looked at me, eyes wide. Not angry, just shocked. He realized the surprise he had been proud to reveal had been completely outmaneuvered. I had quietly flipped the script. My brother's pride, carefully built over years of showing off, collapsed in a second. He muttered excuses, tried to grab the card, but I held it loosely, letting it dangle like a key to their unraveling. The room felt heavier. Every fork clink, every whispered gasp, added to the tension. I smiled softly, not cruelly, just satisfied. Because this was never about revenge in a messy, loud way. It was about precision, timing, control. And as the hall continued to stare, frozen in disbelief, I realized, sometimes, the quietest moves leave the deepest marks. The room stayed silent, but the tension was electric. Every eye was on my brother, the man who had so confidently commanded the hall just minutes ago. His chest heaved, not with pride, but with panic. I sat back, sipping my drink slowly, letting the embarrassment settle around him like a fog. My husband, still shocked, glanced at me. No words needed. He knew I had orchestrated this moment perfectly. Whispers started again. "I can't believe this. Did she really? How did she know?" My brother tried to salvage it. It's not what it looks like," he stammered, fumbling with the card. But the map, now in full view, exposed his miscalculations, the tiny lies he had glossed over, and the promises he had failed to keep. My sister-in-law's smile faded. Confusion replaced the forced cheerfulness she had worn all evening. Even the family friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I stood quietly, letting the humiliation do its work. I didn't need to speak. The silence, the shifting eyes, the realization that he had been caught, that was enough. He finally snapped, raising his voice. "This isn't fair." I tilted my head and said calmly, "Fair? You made this about appearances." "I just made the truth visible." His hands shook. His confidence crumbled. Every gesture that once screamed control now looked desperate. And in that moment, the hall understood something vital. The girl who had seemed quiet and unassuming could manipulate the room without raising her voice. Because real power isn't in yelling or forcing attention.
It's in timing,
observation,
precision.
and tonight, I had the upper hand. The rest of the evening was a blur of whispers and sideways glances. My brother tried to salvage dignity, but every attempt made the situation worse. His business partners, who had come as family friends, now exchanged looks that said more than words ever could. I remained calm, letting them squirm. The candlelight danced across my face, soft shadows hiding any hint of satisfaction, but the tension was undeniable. Every subtle movement, every carefully timed glance reinforced the message: I was in control. My husband leaned toward me, whispering, "They can't believe what just happened."
I smiled softly.
"They will remember it for a long time." My brother's phone buzzed constantly in his pocket, ignored at first, then snatched up with trembling hands. Texts, calls, and notifications, all about the very miscalculations I'd exposed. Even before dinner ended, his investors had started questioning him. I watched him fumble, realizing that the fallout wasn't just public embarrassment, it was financial. His credibility, carefully built over years, now cracked in front of everyone who mattered. My sister-in-law's forced smiles faded entirely. My parents hovered, unsure whether to defend him or pretend nothing happened. I took a slow breath. The sound of the piano, faintly playing in the background, filled the pause. Tonight was a lesson in control. One small switch in a clutch, one card, had set off a chain reaction no one could stop.
I didn't gloat. I didn't rush. I simply observed.
And as my brother's confidence unraveled piece by piece, I realized the truth. Sometimes, the quietest moves carry the loudest consequences.
He had thought he could manipulate everyone around him. He was wrong.
And this was only the beginning. By morning, the ripple from last night had turned into a wave. Texts, emails, calls, every person connected to my brother's ventures had seen the documents I had subtly exposed. A few had already demanded explanations, others froze pending audits. I watched quietly from my living room, coffee in hand. The city outside moved on, unaware of the storm I had unleashed inside these walls. My brother called frantically, pacing in his hotel room. Every attempt to explain or justify himself fell flat. The very investors who had once praised his stability now questioned everything. Every promise he had made, every claim about assets, now looked suspicious. At home, my parents were still stunned. My father's face, usually so confident, was pale. Mom's hands shook as she scrolled through the first emails of concern from family friends and associates.
I didn't intervene. I didn't need to. I let them feel the consequences of their choices.
The irony wasn't lost on me. He had tried to manipulate the room, to present control and pride, and now every move he had made was unraveling publicly. Even my husband, sitting beside me, whispered, "You really did it."
I simply smiled. Calm. Quiet.
Because in moments like this, power isn't loud. It's precise. By the afternoon, the first calls for formal audits arrived. The media hadn't caught wind yet, but the investors were circling like hawks. My brother's credibility, carefully curated over years, was now fragile and public. And while the chaos built around him, I realized one thing clearly. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to confront. I just needed the right card, at the right time. And the consequences? They were going to be deliciously permanent. By the time my brother arrived at the office that morning, the tension was palpable. Calls from investors had multiplied overnight. Auditors had requested full documentation. Even his closest allies were asking questions he couldn't answer. At home, my parents were glued to their phones, their faces pale. They had finally realized that what they thought was a harmless family favor had triggered a storm.
I didn't speak. I didn't need to.
When my brother stormed in, angry and desperate, I simply sat at my desk, calm, eyes steady. "You set me up," he spat. I smiled lightly. "I didn't set you up. You set yourself up when you thought you could forge, manipulate, and lie."
He went silent, realizing the truth in my words.
My parents finally spoke, their voices trembling. "Arya, can't you just forgive him?"
I leaned back.
"Forgiveness isn't the issue.
Accountability is.
You all treated my property and my trust as expendable. That ends today." The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. My brother's pride had been shattered, and my parents were beginning to understand that this wasn't just about embarrassment, it was about consequences. "I'm giving you the chance to fix things legally," I said softly. "Sign the correct documents, retract the forged lease, and cooperate fully with your auditors and investors. Otherwise, you'll face the results of your own choices.
My brother swallowed hard. His voice caught.
You're serious?
I nodded. Calm. Controlled. Precise. Yes.
I am. And in that moment, they realized something crucial. The 22-year-old they had underestimated was not only capable of defending herself but capable of ensuring justice without raising her voice, without chaos, and without a single misstep. The lessons had begun.
And they were only getting started.
By the next week, the consequences were unavoidable. Investors called meetings. Auditors demanded complete transparency. Every misstep my brother had tried to hide was now under scrutiny. Emails, invoices, and contracts, all carefully documented, exposed him in ways he couldn't spin. I watched quietly as the dominoes fell. My parents hovered nervously, still unable to comprehend how quickly everything had spiraled.
Their confidence had vanished.
My brother stormed through my house one afternoon, phone in hand, pleading, desperate. Arya, this isn't fair. I can fix it.
I didn't flinch. I didn't even look up from my laptop. Fair. I said softly.
You think fairness exists when you forge my name, manipulate my property, and lie to everyone around you.
The room went quiet.
My words weren't loud, but they cut deeper than any shouting ever could. Over the next hours, I observed the emails, the phone calls, the panic slowly consuming him. Investors questioned his integrity. Audits revealed irregularities. The facade he had built over years crumbled in a matter of days. My parents tried to intervene, but the situation was beyond them. The very system my brother had abused to gain advantage was now turning against him, legally, financially, and publicly. I didn't need to threaten. I didn't need drama. Precision had done the work. By evening, my brother slumped in the living room, defeated, exhausted, and broken. My parents finally understood that control isn't about appearances. It's about accountability. And tonight, the lesson was complete. Sometimes, the quietest, smallest moves are the ones that leave the deepest marks. By the time the weekend arrived, the fallout was irreversible. Investors had frozen funds. Auditors had flagged every misstatement. My brother's credibility, the one thing he had clung to, was gone. My parents sat in stunned silence, realizing their attempts at control had backfired spectacularly. I walked through my house calmly, the chandeliers casting soft shadows on the marble floors. Everything I had built, every investment, every document, every precaution, all of it protected me, silently and efficiently. My brother tried one last desperate plea. Arya, please, don't ruin me completely. I stopped, looked at him, and said softly, I didn't ruin you. You did this to yourself. I just made sure everyone saw it. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. It was understanding. Recognition. Respect. Not for me, not yet, but for the consequences of their actions. My parents realized they could no longer treat me as a child. My brother understood he could no longer manipulate anyone with false authority. The house, the documents, the timing, every detail had worked perfectly. I poured myself a glass of wine, letting the quiet fill the space. The sense of control, earned not through chaos but through patience, precision, and intellect, was intoxicating. For 22 years, I had been underestimated. Tonight, that ended. Because real power doesn't shout. It waits. It observes. And when the moment is right, it moves, quietly, cleanly, irreversibly. As I sat in my home, calm, victorious, and free, I realized something profound. Some lessons are learned the hard way. Some victories are silent. And some families finally see the truth, too late.